Hey, what's going on there, folks? Earthmaster here, checking in. April 4th, 2020, about 8:56 p.m. West Coast time, and taking a look at the Earthquake 3D globe here. Shows quite a bit of earthquake activity out there in the southwestern part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, up through the Fiji Islands and into the Indonesia Islands area over here. Nothing major up here at all. Looking pretty moderate as far as average earthquake activity goes. Pretty quiet up here to the north, actually eerily quiet throughout the Pacific Ring of Fire, except for that portion there that I mentioned over here on the southwest. Kind of a strange event there. Activity out here along the west coast still continues with earthquake swarming in Idaho and also some earthquake swarming in Southern California. Southern California right now is the hot spot of activity here. Kind of want to bring up this map right here from the USGS. It does show the last 7 days, all magnitudes here, and most of this activity was from yesterday, following that 4.9 earthquake there they had in Anza, California, there down in Southern California. Pretty good sized earthquake down there. Quite a few folks feeling it. Of course, this is not the big one, right? This is not the big one that everyone is expecting. That one will be probably an 8.0 or so, and that will be not a good thing. But anyway, 618 earthquakes, folks, just in this specific area of Anza, California. And most of this activity is roughly around the same depth of, the same depth below the surface there. About 10 kilometers or so below the surface. And it stretches throughout magnitudes here. It's over a swath of about, let's see here. Let's bring this back one more and we can get a little bit better detail here. Roughly about, I'm going to say 2 to 3 miles of activity spread out here along the San Juanito fault system. Now this is kind of like a cluster of San Juanito segments here. San Juanito Fault Zone, Anza section. There's a couple different names for it, but this is all roughly around the same type of system here, the San Juanito Fault, with different fragments of it. And this cluster right here is right in the middle of two of these lines here. The let's see here, what do we got here? It's the San Juanito Fault Zone Anza section, the Buck Ridge Fault. And over on this side here, in this middle, in between these cluster of quakes, we have the San Juanito Fault Zone Anza section, the Clark Fault. So, a lot of activity occurring between these two folks. I mean, this is a good amount of activity just for, just within the 24 hours. I mean, 634 earthquakes. You can probably minus maybe, say, 5 or 10 from older previous activity, but it doesn't matter. There's a lot of activity occurring out here. And the fault system that I mentioned, the San Juanito fault system, is a interesting fault. I did bring up a little bit of info here from the Wikipedia source in regards to that San Juanito fault system. A little bit of information from this states that it's a major strike slip fault that runs through the San Bernardino, Riverside, San Diego, and Imperial counties in Southern California. The San Juanito fault zone is a component of the larger San Andreas fault system, right? Transformed system, and is considered to be the most seismically active fault zone in the area. Together, they relieve the majority of the stress between the Pacific and North American plates, right? It's a two big plates. A Pacific plate, right? Huge. And the North American plate, huge. The San Juanito fault zone itself consists of many individual fault segments. I mentioned that, right? Sections of it, segments. Some of which have only been individualized as recently as the 1980s. But actively along the lines of faults has been documented since the 1890s. One segment of the San Juanito Fault Zone, the Anza seismic gap, has not experienced any major activity since instrumental records have been kept. Each segment was evaluated for its seismic risk and was assigned a probability for the occurrence of a large rupture for the 30-year period starting in 1995. While several of the large earthquakes along the SJFZ have not resulted in significant property damage or loss, the cities of Hemet, okay, and it goes on and on and on. Let's see, the recurrence interval for a series of large earthquakes starting in 1899, including the 5.9 1937 Twillinger Valley earthquake, was 18.5-14. It goes on that little series there. Yet there has not been a strong earthquake for 32 years since the 1987 earthquake there. So we're looking at potentially, a 6.0 earthquake or so, at least, in this area, because it's been 32 years, and the intervals, according to these scientific folks here, range from 5 to 19 years. So we're almost double that right now in this area. Interesting activity. Let's see here. There's quite a bit of information on this. There's a lot. There's more than I want to read on here, folks. But if you want to look up the San Juanito fault system out there, it's worth reading into a little bit. There's definitely been some major players, major earthquakes out there on that system. It's a pretty active fault, right? Secondary to the San Andreas fault system for stress relief out there along those two plate boundaries. Tremendous amount of earthquake activity out there, and earthquakes as we speak. I do want to go up to the Idaho part of the states here, and we'll take a look at the activity that's occurring up and around Idaho. Let's go ahead and go back down to 1 day here, 2.5 and above. We'll swing in here to Idaho. This is just 2.5 and above. Still pretty good cluster of quakes out there, and this has seemed to be on an uptick ever since that 4.9 last night there in Southern California. And once again, this activity occurring close and in and around the Sawtooth Fault System. These 2.5s are north of the region, but once we go ahead and add the all magnitudes here, let's see here, 7 days, all magnitudes. Okay, hold on. There we go. There's quite a bit of activity here that has occurred down into the Sawtooth Fault System, which is a major plate down there. Major fault, I should say, in the Idaho region. And it's been quite a long time since they've seen a major earthquake out there. I think 4,000 to 7,000 years is when that last 7.5, I think, earthquake struck out there. So big potential for large earthquakes out there, even in Idaho, folks. California is pretty bad when it comes to taxes and stuff like that, but I don't think our earthquakes are leaving California to go to Idaho. It's just part of the plate system out here in the Intermountain West here. But looking at the 1 day magnitude 2.5 and above shows pretty good activity still. 18 earthquakes in this region. When I do add the all magnitudes here, let's go ahead and add that 1 day all magnitudes. It only goes up by one register, which I believe is fake there, false. USGS is a little bit behind on including information here from these earthquakes. Like I said, when I go to the 7 days all magnitudes, we blow up this map to 188 earthquakes, which is still midget when it comes to the earthquake activity in Southern California right now, but nonetheless, still a pretty good swarm up there in Idaho. I do want to show you guys the Yellowstone map here real quick. This is the overview of Yellowstone National Park with the seismograph stations on a map scale. We got the southeast corner of Yellowstone National Park here, and southwest over here towards Moose Creek, Idaho. If you notice, Moose Creek, Idaho, Pitchstone Plateau, and a couple of stations up here to the north have cut off their data coming in, their seismic data to the stations there. So we don't know what's going on in that section of the park. The other sections of the park, for example, Upper Falls, Joseph's Coat, Pelican Cove, Pelican Cone, Mirror Lake Plateau, including Old Faithful, has been recalibrated to an extent where you don't see any interference from the Idaho earthquakes at all. All this activity here you see on the western part prior to the cutoff is from Idaho. It looks like a major earthquake swarm in Yellowstone National Park, but it's not. These are all 3 to 4 point magnitude earthquakes in Idaho showing up on the Yellowstone National Park seismograph station here. Maybe even a little bit above 4.0. These are some very well-defined, significant signatures here on the quakes. But for some reason, the USGS decided to flatline the data to where nothing shows up. I mean, look at Old Faithful. You would have to have probably an 8.0 earthquake for something to even show up on any of these graphs here that they have recalibrated. Interesting as to why they've done that. I don't know. They didn't do it over here to Parker Peak. A lot of activity here. Well, on the east, northeast, very northeast side of the caldera, northeast side of Yellowstone National Park, still showing significant earthquake activity signatures from the Idaho earthquakes very strongly there on that side. But not for sure what they're up to. I mean, look at these stations that are showing barely anything. They're so squashed when it comes to picking up anything right now. Like I say, you couldn't see any swarms. If there was a swarm going on in Yellowstone, you would not be able to see it the way these guys have everything so squashed down. But anyway, folks, gonna go ahead and end it at that. It's pretty mellow night aside from the activity in Southern Cal and Idaho. We'll see what the night has in store. Have a good evening. I got to get up early in the morning. Got some storm chasing going on here in Northern California. Finally, potential for some severe weather, maybe even a couple weak tornadoes here in Northern California. So stay tuned. If you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure you do subscribe for the latest video updates. And like I said, my severe weather chasing tomorrow. Definitely don't want to miss out. We'll chat to you guys a little bit later. Have a great one out there.